End of the month, and time for another independent book review. And actually it was only a couple of weeks ago that I did my last review because I was really running pretty far behind before. Now I'm catching up, and in fact I even said that I was going to review something that was done by this person who calls herself Texan in Tokyo, a series of books about her life in Tokyo. But something else caught my eye, and I really want to talk about it, so I'm going to review that book, that series, next month. And right now, I want to talk about this one. I am going to review it and just talk a bit about what happened with it. Now, some of you may say, well, no, wait a minute, that's traditionally published. Actually, this was originally self-published. This was one of us. It's an independent, but was originally published as an independent book, originally self-published as a blog. Yes, blogs are self-published, as much as some bloggers would like to pretend they're not. Essentially, here's how it went. Originally, this guy Andy Weir, who was not a professional author, he's a scientist, a professional scientist, and he wanted to tell a story utilizing what he knew in the sciences. So he started writing this thing and putting it chapter by chapter up as this blog. Might have been entry by entry, because the idea is that the character is putting these different entries in, and it'd be really cool if that was the way it was done, so people reading it could be, it's almost like found footage type of a thing. But anyway, however he did it, it was basically bit by bit up on as this blog, and people started seeing it for free as it was going along, and it really, was attractive to them. They really thought it was neat, and they encouraged him to publish it as a larger sort of thing, in particular on Amazon, because Amazon allows you to self-publish or independently publish on Kindle. So he did, and he wanted to give it away for free. This is a story he did, he just wanted people to have, even though it was an enormous amount of research. I mean, it was like the worst of both worlds, because the hard thing about writing fiction is you have to create the story, the hard thing about nonfiction is you have to do the research. This was both of those things, so it's mind-blowing how much work he put into this, and yet he wanted to give it away for free. But Amazon does not allow you to give away your Kindle books for free. You have to charge at least 99 cents. So he charged exactly 99 cents. And it just went viral. People started, buying it everywhere. I think he had used his free days at Amazon. If you go exclusively with them, and I believe he did, then you can do 5 free days, and then lots and lots of people see it, etc. And it exploded. All sorts of people started seeing it, buying it for low price, for free, etc., etc. And unlike what a lot of people like to say, some people like to say, oh, well, if you don't go with the traditional publisher first, they're never going to pay attention to you. Well, guess who came knocking at his door after this was a huge seller? Even though a lot of people had already gotten it, they wanted to do a second printing of it, because they recognized, and that whoever did this was being so smart, they were recognizing that the people who oftentimes buy on Kindle, and particularly the ones who get the books for free, are different from the ones who buy at bookstores. So this traditional publisher got the rights, published it, sold it at bookstores where it was a whole new audience, got a whole lot more people, plus they had a larger marketing service, which is, traditional publishers have a larger promotional and marketing department than we do as individuals. So it really got out there widely, producers saw it, wound up being made into this big studio film, and now Andy Weir is a professional author. So this obviously should give us a lot of inspiration of our work. It's not that you should necessarily look at what he did and do exactly the same. That will probably happen again. There will probably be people who do that, but there are other things as well. What you should really study and research about his work, and I'm going to put a couple links here in the doobly-doo below. But what really worked for him is the farsightedness of it. Now, in his case, he just wanted people to read it. But as publishers or authors who are trying to, as independent publishers and as authors who are trying to make a profession at this, what we can really learn is the idea that if you don't look at the individual profit now, instead of looking at, I want to make $2.50 per book now, we instead look down the road and realize, you know what, I give away these for free, and I'm going to make a lot more selling additional ones for $1 than I would for $2.50. And I'd rather sell 100 books at $1 than 10 books at $2.50. Mathematically, it just works out better. And the important thing to note in all of that is basically modesty. We have to recognize, even though we believe, what we're doing is the best work. I mean, we certainly wouldn't be doing it if we didn't believe it. Believe that what we're doing was important and great, and et cetera, et cetera. But we have to recognize also that we're not known. When I myself was going through some of the books and figuring out what I want to read, I found, as much as I am hugely supportive of independent works, my eyes kept going to like George R. R. Martin or basically names that I knew. I hated to admit Stephen King, but I just noticed his name before other people. John Krakauer is one of my favorite nonfiction authors. But I was trying to get some lesser known ones. But the problem is, if we were not known, people aren't, even for people like me who are big supporters, we aren't necessarily going to take a chance on this new work. And even ourselves, even though we want other people to look at our stuff, we aren't necessarily going and looking at each other's stuff if we don't necessarily know each other. So we have to recognize that and be modest about it, and recognize that if somebody doesn't know us, they're not necessarily going to give us a chance. So we need to give away as much as we can for free to just sort of entice people and let them know, here's what it is. They're not going to go off of just a pitch. Oh, my book is about this, and spend like a day explaining it. They're going to give us one sentence, as we usually give each other only about a sentence. And well, you know what? That's the best thing. Think about it as you are the audience. You're the one looking at somebody else's work. You don't know them. Why should you get their book? And there's going to be other things we're going to talk about, the most important things to get, such as cover, description, et cetera, et cetera. But basically, what's really important in the case of The Martian is the way that Andy Weir went about it, which was go to the audience where they were, tell them, just basically start giving it to them, letting them see it, and slowly start building the audience, building their trust until you get to a point where they just trust you. Now, I mean, heck, when his next book comes out, absolutely I'll get it. Because I know his work now. Now, in my case, of course, I got to know it because of the movie and went through that way, but other authors that I've started to follow because I started to follow their stuff for free and I like it, they're building my trust, and as a result, they're continuing to and they're having to write. And that's something else that's really important, is the fact that you don't just put it all out there at once. And that's also important to learn about what Andy Weir did. He didn't just put it all out and then just get forgotten. He put a little bit, then a little more, and a little more, and a little more. It was like all these breadcrumbs. Then he put it onto Amazon. Then, it was like all of these steps that eventually led him to where we are. That's, I think, the great lesson for us to learn is A, build people's trust, and B, well, actually that's B. A, actually, is there is hope. It's sometimes so discouraging for us because we will work our butts off, we'll get it out there, and we're hardly getting any exposure, and we think, oh, we have to go with traditional publishing. Then you go to the traditional publishers and like, okay, put sparkly vampires in it. I know not necessarily that all the time, but it's very much like the film industry, which I was in for like 20 years, and it's the difference between studios and independent places. Studios want you to dumb it down. They want you to create, whatever was the popular thing last time. I remember when I was pitching when Titanic was out, and suddenly everybody wanted me to put an old woman narrating the story, because they had it in their heads that the old woman narrating the story, well, that was in Titanic, and that's what made it such a big hit. And they couldn't realize that, no, it's these basic elements of storytelling that people want to see, whether it happens to have an old lady or not. But it's just goofy, bizarre stuff, and the publishers are no better. Well, they're slightly better, but for the most part, it's the same type of thing. They're looking at, well, what was the popular thing last time? Okay, we have to do that again. And so, and as much as I've been advocating for independent books here, there is a value to traditional publishing. Obviously, they have the better, bigger promotions, all that sort of thing. But it's like studio films to independent films. Yes, the studios, you go to pitch them and it's just mind-bogglingly stupid. I literally had notes before where they would say, this is too smart, you have to dumb it down. And one person who lectured me about how oftentimes a family will pay $100 to go to a movie, and if I dared make them think, well, I just ruined their evening and made them waste $100. That's literally a note that I got one time, and I got others that were very, very similar to that. People think that the publishing industry is so much above that, and they're really not. They're looking at whatever was popular last time, and they're, again, telling you, just redo that. But then you're also going to get, so what, you're going to have a lot of these dumb films, but you're also then going to get things like The Avengers, which was a great movie, or you're going to get a traditionally published book that is also going to be extraordinary. And so it's not all bad news, but you're going to have a bit of both, and it's going to be frustrating and all that. The good news about this is that you can take is, let's say you do want something traditionally published, you go to them, and they're trying to put tell you to do all these stupid editions, and you really don't want to do it. Well, back in the old days, that's it. You either conform to what they're wanting you to do and dumb down your book, or you're screwed. You do nothing with it. Now, you go to put it on a blog. You go and independently publish it. You do all these other things, and people try to scare you and say, well, if you do that, no one's going to want it, to do traditional publishing. Well, and then you have to make your choice. Is it that important for you to, are you okay with compromising? Or if you just absolutely have to do it your way, totally fine. It may never get found. It may end up disappearing. But then again, it could have disappeared even if it was traditionally published. So you may, it might disappear. It might get a little following that then builds it up. But at least you have this other option, and you can go with it. So that's important to learn from that. A, and then B, it's important to recognize the farsightedness of it. Nobody knows us yet. We have to give them a little bit and build their trust. Finally, the only other thing I want to say about this, and this actually isn't as much about publishing, but goes into movies. Like I say, I worked in it for about 20 years. I've been writing about it in my own blog that I call Tales of a Failed Filmmaker. I watched this movie and went, how the hell did this get made? And I don't mean that as a put down to the movie. Exactly the opposite. This is really smart. The movie went almost exactly with the book. In fact, many times, word for word. The only thing is that the book talks a little bit more about the specifics of how certain things work, which you really wouldn't want in a 2-hour movie. And there's one time when during the book, he has a little bit more of an adventure on this one particular trek that he does, which the movie needed to cut down. He had to cut something because it has to be 2 hours long. So the differences were very, very small. And to me, I hope to God, here's what's amazing, is this wasn't just a success. This was a big success. It was #1 at the box office. Was beating movies even during its second week. It was beating movies that were out on their first week, movies that people expected to be huge hits. This was beating on a second, possibly even third week. Eventually, it got cut off of that #1 slot, and then went back to the #1 slot. This, more than ever, is like proof that people do want to see intelligent, intellectual movies and stories that actually inspire their minds. That person who told me that I'm ruining their day by making them think was dead wrong, and this is the proof. And so I hope that studios and major publishers are looking at this and learning from it, and so next time they won't look at it and go, well, last week sparkly vampires were in, so you have to do that again. Instead, they look at this and go, you know what? People want original, intelligent stories. And I think it's more likely even to happen out of certainly out of independent movies and out of independent books. But hopefully the traditional publishers and the studios will get it as well, because we'd really like to see them doing more of that type of stuff first. That type of stuff as well. As independent publishers, we don't want to always have to lead. Alright, well, that's it. I'll see you next month. Be sure to read more independent books, and thank you all for watching.